A digital mixer is still a mixer. In other words, its basic purpose is the same as any other mixers, to coordinate many different sound sources into one unified mix. The digital part of the equation concerns how this is done, and the control options and flexibility with which it is offered. The advantages of digital equipment is that you can store and recall settings and setups at the touch of a button, plus use a computer to provide additional features such as programmability and storage. Looking first at the internal benefits of a digital mixer, although the channel strip would appear to be much like its analogue cousins, there is one major enhancement here. Just because you plug into, say, channel 1 on the mixer, you can actually route that input through any channel you like. The internal routing, in other words, is totally flexible. Additionally, although you may have the same amount of EQ and effects possibilities as you do on an analogue mixer, all of the settings and levels can be recalled at the touch of a button. Right, no more squinting at pieces of paper or trying to remember that great EQ setting you had on your lead singer's mic. And this goes for channel fader positions as well. Yes, very eye-catching, isn't it? Although, as you're probably starting to understand, mixing is more to do with setups and slow movements than rapid changes to your sound. There's no denying, though, the power of being able to recall these settings at the touch of a button. Here on the Yamaha 01V96, for instance, you can recall multiple scenes, complete with effect settings, and this is a wonderful facility to have, especially if you're mixing several bands in one night. But it's also extremely useful for particular effects. A different range of EQs on a ballad maybe. Finally, the power of signal controlling effects like noise gates and compressors is undeniable, but also so is the expense of purchasing several noise gates or compressors, which is what you'll need to do for every channel on an analogue mixer on which you'd like to apply these effects. Not the case here. A noise gate and compressor limiter is available on every single input channel. You can imagine, and the smart ones I'm sure can work it out for themselves, the cost saving on this alone. A digital mixer is not just a sealed unit. Its very digital nature allows you to interface with computers both for storage and recall of data and for on-screen control, such as here with the 01V96's Studio Manager software that replicates and in fact expands upon the controls and functionality of the 01V itself. If you're travelling light, you could, for instance, simply carry your settings on your laptop and download them into the mixer provided by the venue anywhere in the world. Plus, there's a whole range of expansion cards that let you add new features and new functionality. Affordable digital mixers were pioneered by Yamaha, and they continue to come in all shapes, sizes and prices, right up to the PM1D that we can see installed here at the Cerritos Performing Arts Center in California. But they all have this in common. Take the fun and games you can have with any mixer, and then add the almost limitless flexibility that you can get by throwing computer control into the mix. The purpose of a power amplifier is to make sound louder. To some extent, it's as simple as that. A well-made and probably more costly amplifier will amplify sound better and be less distorted than a less expensive unit. And a bigger, in terms of output power, amplifier will amplify sound louder than an amplifier with a lower rating. So what's the mystery? What are the issues? Well, one issue is that people tend not to realise how important amplification is. A good power amplifier will make your sound clean, clear and punchy, make it come alive. An inexpensive amplifier, or one that's not compatible with the rest of your system, can make your sound weak and dull, or at worst, completely fail to operate. You'll find this usually happens right in the middle of your performance. And after all the work you did learning how to play your instrument and learning the songs. Yep, amplification is that important. Power amplifiers are not the stuff of dreams in the looks department. Here you have a power switch, a series of LEDs to warn you about the temperature of the amp, and whether it's in protection mode to prevent overheating or damage to your loudspeakers. A typical 2-channel amp has attenuators for each of the amp's A and B channels, plus other LEDs for clipping and signal, i.e. is it on. Finally, you can see air intake grills for the forced air cooling system. From this you can probably see that heat is obviously a key issue for a power amplifier. Indeed, any electrical device that generates power, from a power amplifier to a light bulb, generates heat as a byproduct. This heat is unavoidable, but it is the sworn enemy of the electronic circuits in the amplifier, so dealing with this heat is extremely important. In the first place, Yamaha designs its amplifiers to be as efficient as possible to reduce heating. But by properly matching the amplifier to the loudspeakers it'll be driving, you'll definitely be able to avoid trouble. Let's back up a minute and look at the causes of this heat. The key parameter of a power amp is its power output rating, basically how loud it'll go. Power rating is measured in watts, but wattage is only part of the picture. 200 watts may be twice the electrical power of 100 watts, but actually loudness or acoustic power follows a logarithmic scale, meaning every time you double the volume, a 10 times increase in electrical power is required. So to double the volume difference of 100 watts, you would actually need 1000 watts, which is why there are so many high-powered amplifiers to choose from. The delivery of power is one thing. How loudspeakers receive and handle that power is the other factor you have to consider. And this is a question of the impedance of the loudspeaker, which is measured in units called ohms. The relationship between watts and ohms sounds like a detective story, doesn't it? Not only determines how loud your system will be, but also whether or not your amplifier's heating will be manageable. Impedance is a measure of resistance that the loudspeaker system presents to the amplifier. Higher impedance will translate to lower wattage, while lower impedance means higher wattage. A lot of amplifier advertisements, you see, have power ratings done at very low impedances, which makes it look good on paper, but actually is pretty misleading about the actual usable power that you're going to have at your disposal. So why not have all loudspeakers running at super low impedances? As with most things in life, there is a balance. If the loudspeakers have impedance ratings that are too low, the amplifier might not be able to effectively power the system without generating too much of its number one enemy, heat. And if the impedance is too high, the path the signal flows through will be too restricted. All of the professional loudspeaker systems that Yamaha makes have nominal impedances of either 4 or 8 ohms, and that makes them perfect for use with most of the amplifiers on the market today, and we'll cover them later in the program. As a matter of fact, most professional sound companies do not operate systems with impedances of less than 4 ohms, again, mainly to avoid the heating and risk of failure.
If we were to measure a piece of wire with a meter, we would show 0 ohms. It'd be a dead short. It would go right through. A speaker, typically the one I'm talking about, has 8 ohms, so it has some resistance. If I put an 8 ohm speaker next to an 8 ohm speaker and I put them in parallel, I'm going to get a 4 ohm load, which means it's going to be closer to a dead short than just the one 8 ohm speaker. So can I put 2 speakers on an amplifier? Sure. Can I put more? Can I put 3? Can I put 4? Why not put 20? Well, the more speakers I put on there, obviously the closer I approach that 0 or that dead short. If I take 2 8 ohm speakers and I put them together, I have a 4 ohm load. If I take 2 more 8 ohm speakers and I have this 4 ohm load and I put them together, I'm going to get a 2 ohm load. If I do it again, I'm going to drop down, and so forth and so on.
I see.
You're never going to get to 0, but you're going to get close. The amplifier, as you drop the impedance, increases in operating temperature, and it also increases its distortion. Most amplifiers are designed to do 4 or 8 ohms. So the closer I get to this 0 point, which theoretically can't happen, the more distortion I'm going to get, and the amplifier is running quite a bit more unstably than it otherwise would. So you want to avoid 2 ohm loads. You really do.
Amps come in 2 basic flavours, single channel and 2 channel. And a 2-channel amp can use their 2 channels in a few different ways. 1. In stereo mode. This powers a full left-right system, or as 2 individual mono amps, one say for your main speakers and the other for your monitor system. 2. In parallel. This is where one input signal is fed to both amplifier channels. Use this to send the same signal to 2 different loudspeaker systems, and still use the attenuators for level control. 3. Bridge mode, where each channel's power is combined into one giant mono output, effectively doubling the power being delivered to a single set of outputs. This mode is generally used for subwoofers and large speaker systems.